How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today I'm giving you 3 reasons you'll hate each of Denver's best suburbs, and I'm starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everett, and listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around Denver, Colorado, then this is the channel for you. So that subscribe button and notification icon you see on your screen, make sure you're clicking on those as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And as much as I try to be a little creative and educational here on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of Denver's most talented realtors. And we're helping people move here each and every day. So the number and email you see, know that I'm always the person. Answer your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails. They're winning if you need me. Now that we have that fun-filled stuff out of the way, let's get to what we're here for, and that is 3 things you're gonna hate about Denver, Colorado's best suburbs. All right, so Denver, Colorado, obviously my hometown, love it. And there are some amazing suburbs around Denver that we're gonna review. We're not gonna cover every single one of them, but some of the best. But today we're talking about things that you might not love about that suburb. So we're gonna jump right in. First one, and I can already hear it. Some people are gonna say that's not really a suburb of Denver, but we're gonna cover Castle Rock. So Castle Rock, Colorado, located due south of Denver, roughly about 45 minutes down I-25. Now, Castle Rock is a great community. It's seen a lot of growth. It's got these big outlet malls and a lot of things to do. It's got a great downtown area, tons of living opportunities and outdoor space, so much to love. But because of that rapid growth, one thing you're gonna hate about Castle Rock is that you can have a lot of congestion. You can have a lot of traffic issues, mainly because you're between 2 canyons and I-25 running north and south, south-north, I love to do that every time, is the big in and outlet of Castle Rock. And so you can get a lot of traffic congestion there. Side note, I once had a commenter get upset at the fact that I count with my fingers as I go along in these videos. I truly believe all of you can count to 3, so bear with me for the fact that I talk with my hands. The number 2 thing that you might hate about Castle Rock is the fact that there are limited job opportunities compared to a city-esque of its size. So typically, you might see the size of Castle Rock, you think there's more opportunities, and I think this has improved, but it's not comparative. Many people that live in Castle Rock are still, if they're not remote, they're heading up to the Denver Tech Center, they're heading up to Denver, they're heading down to Colorado Springs. So Castle Rock isn't necessarily one of those communities where the economic function is within the town limits. And the third thing you're gonna hate about Castle Rock is the fact that the cost of living and the cost of housing is on the rise. Along with that growth is coming an increase in prices. Used to be, and still to some extent, people would leave the Highlands Ranch and look towards areas like Castle Rock. Castle Rock, not quite catching up, but it's getting there. Kind of hopping around a little bit because I don't want to just go geographically around. We're gonna jump to Aurora. So Aurora is again, one of the most popular areas in all of Colorado to live, for that matter. It's the 3rd largest city. There I go with my hands giving you numbers again. The 3rd largest city in Colorado. And Aurora geographically is massive. If you look comparing the east side of Denver to the west side of Denver, the west side is chopped into multiple suburbs, whereas the east side is basically just all Aurora. So that's going to play a factor in some of these things you will dislike. Now, people are going to like Aurora for some of its affordability. They're going to like Aurora for the different housing options they have. And there are some truly great areas of Aurora that people are flocking to. But the number 1 thing you might hate about Aurora is that the school quality can change depending on what areas of Aurora you are in. So unlike smaller suburbs, we talk about, again, the size of Aurora. And this is going to be a reoccurring theme here. Because of its size, you really have to pay attention to what schools are going to be in what area and are you getting the quality that you want. Because you can't really look at Aurora and take this bland idea of where are schools rated in Aurora and get an idea of the community within Aurora that you might be living in. Second, and I can already see the comments now of you keep saying traffic, but Aurora gets nasty for traffic. Trust me, this is one of the last communities where we're going to talk about this, but Aurora has some access to highways. They have parts where you can get over to E470. It has parts where you can get over to 225. So there's different highways to get you out of it, but so much of Aurora is side streets and service streets, roads where you're doing 40 to 45 miles an hour with lights. And so because of that, and just kind of the way that Aurora has been laid out, there are points in the day where traffic just gets brutal. Now, I'm not saying it's horrific compared to the west side of town. I'm just saying it's pretty horrific compared to the west side of town. Traffic in Aurora can get bad, and if you don't like traffic and you're having to drive everywhere, you might hate that about Aurora. And third, and this is something that honestly kind of ties back to the schools as well, and that is, again, because of the size of Aurora and how different, I mean, you could be living, going all the way from North Aurora to South Aurora is, an hour commute at times, is the economic disparity. You'll see these neighborhoods that are really in disorder, or neighborhoods that could use some improvement. I want to be careful of my wording here, admittedly. But at the same time, there are parts of Aurora that are staggeringly gorgeous and beautiful, and these luxury homes and country clubs and all this stuff. So you'll see some disparities. You'll see parts of Aurora that people will tell you, you kind of want to stay away from that, and parts of Aurora that are just mind-blowing, and everything in between. It's not like you go from best to worst or anything like that. But because of its size, I keep going back to that, because of its size, you just see these economic disparities in certain areas. So when you're exploring Aurora, you want to be aware of that. It's not just Aurora is like this, it's really going to be segmented. I said I was going to bounce around. I'm going to go right back down south on you. Next up, we're going to talk about Highlands Ranch, the quintessential, I love to say quintessential, suburb of Denver. Highlands Ranch was the original master plan development created in the 90s. It was the suburb of suburbs. And so because of this, the first thing you're going to hate about Highlands Ranch, if you don't like suburbs, is that it is a suburb. It's a suburb as suburb gets. You are out in Leave It to Beaverville, which I'm an old man, and Leave It to Beaver was old when I was young, so you might not even get those references, but that is Highlands Ranch to a boot. So if you want something that, if you want a suburb that at least has like a touch of urban feel to it, Highlands Ranch is probably not going to be your spot. It is suburb, suburb, suburb. Second thing, and not really a traffic congestion thing, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say it for the fourth time in this video, but your commute times can be long just because of where Highlands Ranch is located. It can take you a while to get up to Denver. It can take maybe 45 minutes or longer to get up to Denver. You don't have a very long drive over to the Denver Tech Center, so that's a lot easier, but your commute times from Highlands Ranch can be a bit longer. And the third thing, and really what gets Highlands Ranch, the most, or what affects people as far as their consideration of Highlands Ranch is the affordability. I mean, Highlands Ranch is an extremely desirable location, has been basically since it started to be built, continues to be to this day. Home prices, cost of living in that area is going to be higher than you're going to find in just about any other community or suburb of Denver. Second to that, kind of tying on, is that Highlands Ranch has HOAs galore, homeowners associations, for those of you not aware. And so those HOAs, it's not just a cost factor, but they can also, in the opinion of people who live there and clients I've talked to, sometimes they can be overbearing with their requirements for your home. Now, to me, this has been one of those things where people, it either doesn't bother them or they can't stand it. There's no real kind of like middle ground. They're either somewhat oblivious to it, or they're like, man, I hate my HOA. But if there's something that you're going to be frustrated with Highlands Ranch about, that might be it. Certain times on these videos where I just feel like my mouth shuts down on me, and I just apologize to all of you for it. Staying south, but sliding a bit east, we go over to Parker, Colorado, a community that I have really grown fond of the more and more I do these videos and the more I visit. So you're going to love Parker for its beauty. It's a very pretty community with some great houses, some great outdoor activities. It's got a downtown that's very cool. I'm a huge fan of little downtowns within these suburb communities, but The things you're going to hate about Parker, one is its location is a joy, and it's also can be a pain in the butt. So you're going to have a longer drive. Again, we talk about this, just location. You're going to have a longer drive getting up to Denver, especially in traffic. You could look at, there will be people who tell you can get to Denver from Parker in 30 minutes, and maybe if there is zero traffic on a weekend. But otherwise, you can anticipate 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what part of Parker you're coming from, to get up to the Denver metro, the downtown area of Denver. So if that's important to you, that's a bit of a drive. And you also have a bit of a drive to get to some of these bigger job centers. So you're gonna have to take Parker Road up. You can get over to the tech center in a reasonable period of time, depending on traffic, maybe 20, 25 minutes. Some areas of Parker you can get closer, but you're gonna have a bit of a drive. And you're also just kind of distant from, again, we talked about the tech center, some of these business centers. So if you're not working remote, Parker's kind of one of those locations where it's tucked away a bit, and you're mainly taking Parker Road or E470 to get in and out of it. So your drive time, your commute might be a little longer just because of that location. Second thing about Parker is that, being former farmland, it's mainly a residential community. There's not a lot of commercial space. There's not a lot of things outside of that suburb feel. Not quite as stringent or as suburb as Highlands Ranch gets, but certainly along those lines. You're not going to see a lot of commercial activity out there. It's mainly residential. And third thing you're going to hate about Parker is because of how desirable it is. It is probably one of the most desirable communities to explore on, especially the east side of Denver. You're starting to see those home prices increase. There was a time where Parker was really an affordable area that people were looking to. I still think it has some affordability, don't get me wrong, but you are seeing home prices in Parker increase, and that is something that is straining some of the folks that are looking in that direction. But enough of this south and east part of Denver. Let's get to the west side of town where I live, where I enjoy, and since I'm picking on all these other places, let me pick on where I live, and that is Lakewood, Colorado. So Lakewood, due west of Denver, we're actually neighboring Denver to its west, mainly straight up 6th Avenue. Lakewood's a great suburb, a lot to love. We're right on the Front Range. We're close to towns like Golden. We can get to the mountains in 15 minutes. We can get downtown in 15 to 20 minutes. I love Lakewood, but here's a few things you're gonna hate about it. One, walkability here stinks. That's my humble opinion. I live pretty close to Belmar, not in Belmar, and Belmar is a pretty walkable area itself. So someone who has a townhome or condo over in Belmar, they're gonna tell you, oh man, I would think they're gonna tell you, this is great. I can leave my house, walk down to restaurants, bars, restaurants, all of those things. That is kind of the exception to the rule. If you look at the rest of Lakewood, and you'll kind of see this when you look at west of Denver, these communities were kind of ragtag put together because one, you had the foothills, you had mountains, so they couldn't lay it out flat like they did Aurora and kind of plan around things, but they didn't have that planned development aspect like we talked about in Highlands Ranch, where they really thought through, okay, let's put homes here and shopping here and community centers here. Lakewood's really spread out, and there's a ton of homes and a ton of suburbs. There's things to do among them, but you're not really walking to anything. If I, for instance, wanted to walk to a restaurant from my house, I'm looking at a 30-minute walk to get to a restaurant or to a coffee shop. I can drive it in about 5 minutes, but just because of kind of where they're located, I'm looking at probably a 30-minute walk. So the second thing you might hate about Lakewood is similar to Aurora, there are some economic and school disparities depending on what area and what location of Lakewood you're in. So Lakewood is it's a pretty large suburb. It's not as big as Aurora. Aurora is massive. But because of that, you're gonna see certain areas where the homes are nicer. You can just feel like the economics of that area are stronger. School system, same thing. If you look up Lakewood, you're going to see Jefferson County schools. You're going to see this overall rating, but certain areas are going to have better quality schools than others. And that's something that, clients, friends talk to me about within Lakewood. Some of the knocks, I compare Aurora to Lakewood a lot because some of the knocks we hear on Aurora, I feel are the same knocks that are spoken about in my suburb. So when you're looking at Lakewood, just know that, it's not this panacea of, okay, Lakewood has this rating of schools, you want to look within that. And that, homes in Lakewood, you're going to see some differences. I would also touch on with housing in Lakewood, the closer you get to Denver, the older the homes tend to be. And as you go farther out, they tend to get newer. Doesn't necessarily mean nicer. Mind you, doesn't necessarily mean nicer, but you'll kind of see a disparity as you kind of move out. There's still some nice neighborhoods within each, but that's kind of the subcontext, if you will, as you move farther away from the city. And the third thing, and this is kind of a knock that I've noticed more and more as I get older and people talk about as they explore, but Lakewood doesn't have a distinct downtown. They don't have this area that everybody congregates to. Belmar is kind of that, but that's really only if you live near Belmar. And I mean, I'm within a handful of minutes, and it's not like on a Friday night, I'm like, oh, let's go to Belmar. So Lakewood is different in that way. Littleton to our south, Golden to our west, Arvada to our north, all have a downtown area. And so many of these suburbs have that. Lakewood does not, and that might be something you hate. Up next, and now I'm just going all over the place geography-wise, we're going to Littleton. So, I mean, we're going south, but we're going southwest. And Littleton, one of my absolute favorite suburbs. Again, south and southwest of Denver. If you Google Littleton, you're going to see this, small little area, but addresses in Littleton, there's a lot of unincorporated territory. So it stretches far west, areas that you'll see like Columbine, Ken Carl, that's all Littleton addresses. So because of its size, you could be kind of closer to downtown Littleton, but one of the things that you might hate about Littleton is that, again, you can get pretty suburby there. So if you're looking for more of an urban, suburban lifestyle, downtown Littleton's going to give you that. But as you get farther and farther away from downtown Littleton, the rest is mainly, I'd say, very similar to Lakewood, where it's just neighborhoods, it's just houses. There's not a lot of commercial activity, there's not a lot of urban living. If you are looking for that type of lifestyle and you're looking for Littleton, you're going to want to be near their downtown or you're going to hate it. Second, and again, I'm trying to get away from traffic congestion, but depending on where you are in Littleton, your drive time, again, could be longer. So if you're in downtown Littleton, you can get up to downtown Denver in maybe 20 minutes. You're in a pretty good location there. It's pretty easy to get to the tech center. It's pretty easy to get to downtown Denver. Pretty easy to get around. But because of how big Littleton is, if you're tucked away, say in Ken Carl, which is a great area and a very popular one at that, right on the Front Range, but your drive time, if getting to downtown Denver or the tech center is important to you, you're going to have a longer drive. You're looking at closer to 45 minutes. If there's traffic, maybe an hour to get to some of these locations. So if that drive time and Denver itself is important to you, parts of Littleton are not going to be to your liking. And third, if you're not around, maybe even not in the heart of downtown Littleton, not a lot of nightlife, not a lot of activities, not a lot of things if you're looking for that evening entertainment. I think the main strip of downtown Littleton has some good things to go and do, and it's not like you're going to nightclubs in downtown Littleton until 2 o'clock in the morning. But when people are talking about nightlife, they tend to say that Littleton is lacking there. I mean, I almost feel like I'm talking against myself here when I say that I don't feel that that's a strength of any suburb necessarily, but that was one that people just specifically brought up in Littleton, so I'm sharing it with you. We got a few more to go, and next up, now we're finally moving north and northwest, and that is good old Arvada. Again, one of my favorite suburbs. Basically, all the rest of them are favorites of mine. So Arvada, again, northwest of Denver, great community, one of these really great downtowns, Old Town Arvada. But the first thing that you might hate about Arvada is Farvada, as I like to call it, and locals like to call it. So Arvada is one of those areas where Old Town Arvada has a pretty good location to it. You're not that far from downtown Denver, not that far from the airport, because you can jump on I-70 pretty quick. You can get around from Old Town Arvada pretty well. But there are parts of Arvada that just kind of go. They go farther north and farther west, a lot of service roads. And so even though geographically you're only going a handful of miles more, or farther, excuse me, it can take another 10, 15, 20 minutes. On top of that, and I'm not saying the same type of road congestion that I said in Aurora or in Castle Rock, it seems like Arvada, and I could be imagining this, but I've had enough people bring it up that I think it's real. There are certain times where on these service roads, they're doing construction. Like Ward Road in Arvada is an example of a road that has just been under construction forever. And so on this road, there's multiple lefts that you would like to make to get into downtown Arvada, but you can't. You have to go up further. And it seems like that's lasted for years. I'm exaggerating, but it feels like it's lasted for years. So you have this Farvada combined with weird road construction from time to time, and maybe it's just because these roads are a pain in the butt, that can make Arvada very frustrating. Second, and that is, I told you, I think the best part of Arvada is Old Town Arvada, and because it's the best, because people love it, it also tends to be the most expensive. So the area that, you know, makes Arvada very cool, and there's people who are probably going to watch this from Arvada and they're going to say you're out of your mind, that's not the best part. But to me, the area that people desire the most, shocker, tends to be the most expensive, and because it's really gaining in popularity, that cost is only increasing at a rapid rate. The third thing, and this is very unique for Arvada, at least for the most part as far as Denver, is that parts of Arvada are on a floodplain. What does that mean to you? One, it means that that area could flood. But more importantly, and this is mainly for homeowners, is that if you buy a home in a floodplain, you may very well or likely need flood insurance. This is a completely different insurance policy than your typical homeowner's insurance, because at the end of the day, your homeowner's insurance is not really built for the idea that a storm is going to flood your house. It happens, but it's not, really built for the consistent risk of that. So specific to not Arvada as a whole, but parts of Arvada, if you are thinking of buying a home, you want to be very aware of the fact of whether or not it is on a floodplain or not, because if it's on a floodplain and you buy that house, that might be something you hate. And last up, we have Broomfield, Colorado, northwest of Denver. I know some of you are going to say, wait a minute, you didn't cover North Denver. Well, so Broomfield is a very popular area located northwest of Denver, roughly 30 to 35 minutes away from Denver and about the same distance from Boulder. Very popular for the fact that people can get to both, and it also has very good access to the airport as well. And Broomfield has a ton going for it. It has a ton of variety as far as where you can live, different communities to explore. It's got an area called the Interlochen, which is kind of their tech center. A lot of tech companies working there. So just a lot going for Broomfield. Of the things that you're not going to like, first and foremost, like Lakewood, Broomfield does not have a downtown area. It doesn't have a central location. And Broomfield is a big suburb. It really stretches. So because of that size, again, you don't have a hub. People will say, well, you have the Flatirons Mall, which is, a great location to go to. You have the Arista, which is the Arista Uptown, which is an area that, kind of like Belmar, was supposed to be this hub for Broomfield. And they're in the midst of building Baseline, which is a community in North Broomfield that, again, is supposed to maybe be a downtown-ish area. But it just doesn't have that central location like you see in a Littleton, an Arvada, a Golden. Second, and again, I draw back to some similarities with Lakewood, is because of Broomfield's size, there's not a ton of walkability. It's a great bike community. You can jump on a bike. There's some great trails, including one that goes up to Boulder, but not a lot of walkability. Within your suburb, you can take a walk around your neighborhood, but you're not going to walk to restaurants or bars or shops. That's not really going on in Broomfield. And third and last is that Broomfield doesn't really have the most impressive amenities. So like when you're thinking about shopping and restaurants, things of that nature, looking around Broomfield, at least to this point, as of the making of this video, it doesn't really blow your head back. And especially when it comes to shopping. Not that I'm the world's biggest shopper, my wife has to drag me, but when I talk to people that are shopping, the Flatirons Mall in Broomfield was a big deal, but that's really lacking now. So when people are shopping, a lot of them are jumping over to towns like Thornton and Westminster, where they've got these great shopping areas. So Broomfield lacking in that area. As big as it is, as much as there is there's not a lot in that space. Nice restaurants, nice shops, things of that nature. But hey, there's a reason to love and hate just about anywhere you live, and I'd love to hear your input on any of this. So if you want to give me some of your love and hates, or maybe give me grief for using my hands in a video, like that guy did, that's a perfect opportunity to hit me up. My number, my email, popping up below. I'm always a person. Answer your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails. There when and if you need me. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jimmy Everett. That was 3 things you're going to hate about Denver, Colorado's best suburbs. Until I see you next time, peace.